Hi there, BookTube. My name is Daniel. Welcome back to my channel, Guilty Feet. I've got no rhythm. Today I'm coming to you from beautiful downtown Tel Aviv, where it's a gorgeous sunny day. We have had some rain this week, but right now it is sunny as all get out. You can just about see the reflection of the blue sky in the window, in the glass door behind me. I couldn't face outside because it was just blindingly white. So that's as close as you get. All I can tell you is the sea, the Mediterranean, looks gorgeous this morning. A couple of things I want to do today. I've got a news story which I want to mention. Then there's an end of year top 5, and then I might start something new, sort of weekly top 10 based on something The Guardian does. So we'll talk about that in a second. First of all, let me talk about the news story. I don't know if you've just heard this, but it's just been announced that Alice Sebold, S-E-B-O-L-D, I never don't know, quite sure how to pronounce her name, her memoir, Lucky, which was published in 1999, has, and the press release says, with her consent as well as the publishers, been withdrawn from sale. This is a memoir that was published in 1999. I think I'm not sure it was a massive success when it was first published, but in about 2003 she published a novel, and the novel was called The Lovely Bones. The memoir is Lucky. The novel was called The Lovely Bones, which became a huge hit and then led to the revival of interest in Lucky. Now, I want to be very sensitive about this. Lucky is a memoir of a brutal rape that Ms. Sebold went through, and she wrote this book, which has been many people have found tremendously helpful, tremendously honest. And then the novel, The Lovely Bones, is about the rape and murder of a young girl, Susie Salmon, who then continues to narrate the story of her afterlife. As she looks down on the family she leaves behind, including her sister and her parents and the person who raped and murdered her. It was made into a movie, I think, in about 2009 by Peter Jackson. So between the Lord of the Rings trilogy and the Hobbit trilogy, he made the movie of The Lovely Bones, which I didn't see. I read The Lovely Bones. I haven't read Lucky. I read The Lovely Bones because it was in the early 2000s, before we had internet. It was a book du jour, and it's a very powerful, a very moving novel. To this reader, it was also a transparently personal novel. And what do I mean by that? I mean that perhaps only because we found out afterwards that the author of the novel had also published a memoir about her rape. What you get in The Lovely Bones is someone who is raped and murdered and continues the story, and then you see two lives converging. We have the dead girl, Susie Salmon, watching down from heaven, talking about what she could have done and watching over her family. And you have her sister, who is alive and feels guilt and is left to deal with this tragic loss and the aftermath. And it's very clear in the terms of the story of The Lovely Bones that she is also a victim of this terrible event that's happened. My reading of it was that it was so patently clear that this was the same person. And this was the novelist. And I know we mustn't turn writers into their fictional creations, but it seemed to me it's sort of transparently working through of trauma that from this traumatic event, life had been split in two, where one part is killed and the other is left to deal with the aftermath and left alive. I thought it was an obvious metaphor for how this person was processing trauma, and while the novel is works within its own world, I think, and is moving and effective, I couldn't get past the fact that I thought that what was really happening was a novelist working through something else. The reason the memoir has now been withdrawn from sale is because the person that Alice Sebold had identified as her rapist, who was then sent to prison for I think almost 2 decades, has recently been exonerated, and DNA has proved that he wasn't her rapist. And this is no one is saying that she wasn't raped. Let's be clear. But she has now apologized to the person who spent time in prison and said that he was misidentified, and that so it's just a horrible, tragic story, because what we have now is a woman who's lived with this trauma and is now, is I don't want to say reliving it, but the press is asking questions, and did this? No one is questioning what happened to her, but this tragic story that a man was wrongly imprisoned as a result of the trauma that she suffered. It's a sad story. There are no winners out of this, but I think it's an interesting literary debate. I don't know. I haven't read Lucky, so I don't know how much of the memoir deals with this specific person who was imprisoned, or whether it's about her. I think The Lovely Bones still stands. I don't know how much it's read these days, whether it's still a book that people will track down and read. So I found it affecting, but I had a problem with it in its relationship, the relationship between fiction and non-fiction, or fiction and therapy. Anyway, so that's that story. I have here the Guardian put out a list of the best crime and thrillers of 2021. I thought I'd just run through these quickly and see if any of you have read them and have any comments. So 5 books came out in this year. First one is Silverview by John le Carré. I believe John le Carré's last novel published posthumously. I've only read one le Carré, which is the first Smiley I picked up in an old Penguin green detective. Anyway, it was a very, very slim novel, and they get bigger later. But I have a couple of friends who are massive le Carré fans, and one of my problems, and I have this same problem with many authors, is I always found le Carré very mumsy. When I was going into teenage years, that's when Tinker Tailor was on television. The Alec Guinness version was it looked very long and boring and no interest to me. It was the kind of program my mum watched, and so le Carré seemed to me like an author for parents, not for me. Now I'm a grown-ass man at 52, and I still have not gone back and read le Carré. So I'm interested to hear if any of you are fans of le Carré, fans of Smiley. As I read the first one, I didn't sort of jump and want to read the next one. It was very sort of proto-Smiley, and he's already sort of an old man who's no one paying much attention to in that first book. And later on, of course, he gets called back in, and there's the whole mole. Well, anyway, I don't know much about it. But so anyone big le Carré fans or has read the latest Silverview, his last book, I'd love to hear more about it. After that, they're mentioning Riccardino by Andrea Camilleri, translated from Italian by Stephen Sartorelli, and this is the final inspector. This was written in 2005, according to this. The final inspector Montalbano, I don't know how to pronounce it. Anyway, I've heard of these books. I haven't read them, and I haven't read much Italian crime fiction. So interested if anyone is a fan of those, let me know. Then there's a book called The First Day of Spring by Nancy Tucker, which I don't know anything about at all. From the first line of this assured debut, we know that 8-year-old Chrissy is a murderer. Doesn't make me particularly keen to read it, but if you've read The First Day of Spring, Nancy Tucker, let me know. Then a fourth mentioned is Girl A by Abigail Dean, which I remember very clearly. The beginning of this year, when The Guardian put out a list of books, anticipated books of 2021, this was listed then, or maybe even before that, there was a whole talk about her and the author and the contract that she got, and there was going to be a big hoo-ha and a big investment in marketing this book, and I wondered whether we'd still be talking about the end of the year. Well, The Guardian is. I'm not sure anybody else is. I don't know if anyone here has read Girl A by Abigail Dean. I was looking only because it's been in my head all year and I haven't seen a physical copy, but I saw Amazon has got it's now in paperback, and Amazon is doing the paperback relatively cheaply. I think it's like half price, maybe £4 for a paperback, which is a kind of investment that I might make in order to find out whether this was, as well as being interested in books, I'm also interested in the hype around books. So I would read it on the one hand because I like sort of crime and stuff like that. On the other hand, I'm interested to see how does a book end up being written about before anyone's read it. Does The Guardian choose it to focus on? Anyway, it's showing up again in The Guardian's five best thrillers of the year, and that's kind of interesting to me. I wonder if it's the same person writing this that wrote the article back at the beginning of the year. And the last one on this list is a book called Winter Counts by, and this is a fantastic, this is his full name, yes, David Hesker Wanbley Whedon. And this looks to me a sort of Native American, his debut novel, Whedon, a member of the Sikangul Lakota Nation, gives a fascinating insight into an often overlooked world. Okay, that's kind of interesting. So those are the five of the best crime thrillers from 2021. I'll link to that article below. And then the other thing I'm going to talk about today, the last thing I'm going to talk about today, is the top 10 list. Because I think if I put top 10 in the title of my video, this would be tremendous clickbait. B, The Guardian put these out once a week, and the people who write them, they invite different people to do them every week. Sometimes they are Guardian journalists, and sometimes they are authors from a particular field who have something to promote, and this is a way their publicists are getting their name out there. Write this top 10 list about, let's say you've written a book about horses. Write for The Guardian, do your top 10 books about horses, and you get to promote your book as well at the bottom, and that's a kind of that's part of being on that promotional treadmill. Every week, the people that do these lists outdo themselves in trying to find the most obscure books that you will never have heard of. So let's say you had to write a top 10 list books about horses. You might be able to think of one or two books about horses. Maybe if you had the weekend, you could come up with 10, where that would be the top 10, but it would be just 10 that you'd heard of. Well, even if you could come up with 10 that you've heard of, I promise you the person writing this list will come up with a whole different top 10 that you've never heard of, and it's fantastic. So, I consider myself fairly reasonably interested in books, and I read a fair bit, and usually I've never read more than one or two of the books on the list, which is great because it's a great discovery engine. It's great to see how people stretch themselves and try to be a bit obscure. And I say, absolutely clickbait for the title of this video. So this week they published something which shouldn't be so obscure. It's a top 10 novels about novelists. I'm going to take you through them, and I'm interested to hear how many of these top 10, this person's claiming this was written by Louise Dean, who we're told at the end of the article runs a site called Novelry, Novelry, and I think it's novelry.com is her site, which is a creative writing courses and training for novelists. So that's what she's promoting here, and she's produced this top 10. Number one on the top 10, and so I'll take you through the top 10, then I'll mention some things. The other thing great about these lists is the comment section. The comment section in The Guardian is, I guess, some of the most well-informed and well-read comments outside of BookTube. So always worth, when you get through this and you realise you've only recognised one or none of the books in this list, to go look at the comments and see what other people, and then other people will talk about this. I didn't even think about that. So I'll go through the list. I'll talk about ones that I think of that could have been on this list, and then I'll mention some of the things that the comments threw up. Okay, number one on this list, top 10 novels about novelists, is Wonder Boys by Michael Chabon, which I have read. It was made into a movie, directed by Curtis Hanson, starring Michael Douglas and Robert Downey Jr. in a supporting role. This is in Robert Downey Jr.'s wilderness years. So the movie's the early 2000s, and that's a good 6-7 years before Iron Man. So it's a good movie as well, actually. But the book is terrific. If you like Chabon, it's early work of his before precedes Cavalier and Clay, and some of his later his Imperial period. But a fine novel in its own right. Okay, that was my success. So that's first out of the top 10 novels about novelists, and I've read one. Downhill from there. Okay, number two is The Plot by Jean Hanf Korelitz. Jean or Jean, Jean, I don't know, apologies. I have no idea what gender Jean or Jean is, or how to pronounce that name. Anyway, this is a 2021 novel. Down in his luck, author. It takes up a new teaching role at Vermont College. He is unprepared, uninterested, and feeling imposter syndrome. That sounds to me... and Wonder Boys is to an extent as well. Wonder Boys definitely has a plot line about that novelist, but that feels to me, and this is going to be a recurring theme in this list, more of a campus novel than a novel about novelists. And I think, if we're going to be strict about this, I really think there's going to be a lot of crossover here. Number three is Bunny by Mona Awad, which I haven't read Bunny, and if I remember correctly, Mona Awad's latest book, All's Well, was longlisted for the Rooster, which I spoke about a couple of weeks ago. Bunny, I think, is a title that I saw enough times without knowing much about it, that if I was short of books and I saw that in a second-hand store, I may pick it up and read it, but I haven't read it. Warren University's MFA program, again, sounds like a campus novel to me. Anyway, number four is The Wife by Meg Wolitzer. I've only read one Meg Wolitzer book. It was called The Interestings. I did not find it super interesting, and I haven't read any other Meg Wolitzer, although I believe she is well thought of. And this is an earlier book. This is from 2003. If anyone's read The Wife by Meg Wolitzer, when creative writing tutor decided the average writer, Joe Carlson, said to a student, blah, 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 blah. Tutor? Campus? Oh, is it about novelist? I don't know. Number 5 is, I get to break out my French accent here, because the novel is written by a Swiss author, Joël Dicker, and the novel was originally called La vérité sur l'affaire Harry Quebert. In English, translated as The Truth About the Harry Quebert, Quebert, Qubert affair. I don't know. This was a huge hit in France, and then got translated and was released to, I think, mostly apathetic responses. So I saw this a couple of times, and I remember seeing this on recommended tables in bookshops and some people talking about it. But I've never read a really positive review of the English translation, or since it broke in as an English language release. If you've read this book, let me know that I'm wrong, but I kind of think this underwhelmed. And when I'm researching for this blog, I saw they'd made a 10-part mini-series of The Truth About the Harry Quebert affair, and who knew? 2018 with McDreamy in the main role. Did you know about that? 10 part? Yeah, I've got about as much interest in reading that as watching that as the book. Number 6 on this list of top 10 novels about novelists is Little Women by Louisa May Alcott. Sadly and embarrassingly, I have never read any Louisa May Alcott and never read Little Women. It seemed to me the kind of book that my sister, this is revealing all my bigotry and prejudices that were imprinted upon me as a very young child. I didn't want to read John le Carré because it's something my mum read, and Little Women was something that my sister read. But I feel that I'm probably old enough to have moved past that, and maybe I should go back and read Little Women. But I kind of read mixed reviews that some people love that book and they love it because they read it at a young age, but get frustrated with some of the sexual politics surrounding the book today. So I'm not sure if I will ever go back and read Little Women, but I feel like I probably should, but I probably won't. Maybe one day. Tell me why I'm wrong. Number 7, Dear Committee Members by Julie Schumacher, which I feel like I've heard of, and so I was looking it up, and it's come up a couple of times. This is from 2014, so it's back. I don't know whether you can see that backlist. Again, I think it's a campus novel rather than a novel about novelists. It's a humorous novel, which always makes me slightly wary, as I've got a bit of a tin ear for humorous novels. That's Dear Committee Members by Julie Schumacher. Number 8 is The Retreat by Mark Edwards, which I had never heard of at all. It's a book from 2018, and in reading the synopsis, the words that jumped out at me were dark secrets, and then something about a forest, and it's a writer's residence in a writer's retreat or something. So I guess there's something about novelists in there, but I think it's that sort of British something that I find fairly generic: the secrets and the buried history and the dark secrets. Mark Edwards, I think, is somebody who's originally self-published and has broken into mainstream publishing, so that's a kind of interesting story. But I don't know much about The Retreat by Mark Edwards. If it's something you're familiar with, let me know. Number 9, totally breaking the rules here. This is Jumping Monkey Hill by Chimamanda Ngozi Adichie, which I then go on to read is a short story from a short story collection that is called The Thing Round Your Neck, and this is a short story. So that is not a novel about novelists. It's a short story. So really, Louise Dean, you're well out of order here. I've only read one. I read Half a Yellow Sun, and then I read We Should All Be Feminists by Adichie, and I've had Half a Yellow Sun about 150 pages too long. I'm kind of interested in reading Americana, but I haven't got around to it, so I haven't read these short stories either. And number 10 on this list, of the top 10 novels about novelists, is The Ghost Rider by Philip Roth, which I have not read. I've read a fair selection of Roth books, and I've even read some. The ghostwriter is Nathan Zuckerman, which is Roth's alter ego, and this is the first Nathan Zuckerman. And Nathan Zuckerman comes back in Roth's writing. I think there's 7 or 8 books where Nathan Zuckerman is a character, but later on So he is the ghostwriter of the book, of the title, The Ghostwriter, and later on he's just a device that Roth uses to introduce a story. So I think, for example, the Human Stain, I think, is a story that is narrated by Nathan Zuckerman about a story that he's heard. I think I've got that right. And maybe also I Married a Communist, and even American Pulse. I think he shows up in some of those later works as a sort of authorial device and authorial figure within the thing. Saying, and this, I met when I sat down with whoever it was it Coleman Silk in the Human Stain, or I heard this story about a guy called Coleman Silk. I don't exactly remember how the device is used, but I haven't read The Ghostwriter, although I have come across the novelist. Is a novelist? Is a ghostwriter? Is that a novelist? Anyway, so I think a dodgy list from Rees Dean of the top 10 novels about novelists, of which I've only actually read one. Some of the titles that I came up with, I thought novels actually about novelists. John Updike wrote a couple. So you've got Philip Roth writing about Nathan Zuckerman. Philip Roth, a very Jewish writer, very concerned with his Jewishness, writing about a Jewish novelist called Nathan Zuckerman in a series of books. And then you have John Updike wrote a couple of collections of short stories about a Jewish novelist. John Updike, very much not Jewish, writing about a chap called Beck. And so the first one is Beck, a book. That's what actually it was called, Beck, a book. And then there's a follow-up to that as well, more short stories about this Nebuch Jewish writer that written from Updike's perspective. And I read a couple of those when I was in my Updike period. I guess Less by Andrew Sean Greer, which I read this year, which I enjoyed. Is definitely a novel about novelists. Martin Amis, something off the table. Martin Amis wrote The Information, which is very much a book about novelists. And then this year I read Inside Out by Martin Amis, which is a book about Martin Amis, a fictional, or metafiction, whatever, weird, odd book, a fictional version of the life of Martin Amis, who is a novelist writing about Martin Amis. So I guess that, and then the comment section threw up a whole some things which I hadn't even thought of. Stephen King, the claim is that almost all of his books are about writers. Of course, Misery is definitely a novel about novelists. I haven't read any Stephen King, but I'm familiar with the story of Misery. John Irving's name popped up as somebody, and definitely Garp. The World According to Garp has not a novel within it, but a novella within the novel, and both Garp and I think one of his children are novelists. Beautiful question mark, Where Are You by Sally Rooney is about a novelist, I guess. So there were some other ideas there. And that's it. That's all I've got for you this week. I may come back and try and revisit these, just I think they're interesting ways to talk about books, and as I say, great titles for videos. So that was The Guardian's top 10 novels about novelists, and I'll put links to all the things I've spoken about below. Thanks very much. Have a great day. Bye.